guys, it's Matt here. I wanted to make a recording for some best practices of how that you have deployed. Everything's coming along pretty good. Looks like we have data for the last 11 hours, so should be good enough to kind of do a little run through and some slight configuration tweaks, places to go. So we'll kind of run right into it. I'm going to go through APM, browser, touch on synthetics, servers you guys deployed, that's great, and then insights, which is our analytics tool, end on that. So let's start with APM here. So yeah, as I said, we're looking at the last 12 hours. Your average over this time period is a little under 2 seconds. So we're going to change your AppDex score. I'll show you where to, and I'll explain in a second why. But real quick, for troubleshooting, when there's a spike like this, you can just drag and drop. And every single one of your windows will change to this exact time period. So you can even go in deeper. The time ticker will say when it took place on. This is my time, so that won't be relevant for you guys. But when you toggle over to browser, what's going on in the front end, servers, what was taking place, you'll be able to look at just that one time period. You'll only have transaction traces during this time period. So it looks like this catalog view and this were sort of the two culprits to potentially take a look at. And you can dive directly into those single transaction traces, which we'll see with the little numbers below. But let's look at 12 hours for now. All right, so as I said, this should be bumped up to probably 1.9 or 2 seconds. Right now it's at 500 milliseconds. I'm sure you're getting a lot of alerts for that reason. When it drops below 0.7, it's like an aggregated score by falling into 3 separate buckets. So anything faster than your t-value, a transaction that's quicker than that, it's going to be considered satisfied. Anything between your t-value and 4x that will be tolerated, and then anything 4x that. So right now we're at 500 milliseconds. So anything above 2 seconds, which is 4x 500 milliseconds, 4 times that, that's going to be frustrated. And that's when we'll pull single transaction traces. We don't pull every single one. You can get some in Insights, we don't need to go into that, but we pull the frustrating transaction traces. I'm looking at the right one. So what you want to do is pop down to application settings right here, and you'll be able to change your AppDex score. And again, I'd go probably 1.9 or 2, and then you can start to tighten that up as you optimize the system. Throughput here, requests per minute, and as you toggle over, you'll have a line in every one of your boxes so you can see kind of what was going on during that time period. So the spike there wasn't due to extra throughput, so something to take a look at. It looks like it was actually PHP. So you can see time spent in the code. Looks like this is pretty much all code stuff that would be something to take a look at. Everything spent in MySQL, and your database external calls look to be quite quick. The errors, these are unhandled errors, and we'll look at those. The main 3 things are transaction traces, database calls, and external calls. You can pop into either any of the 3 of these to kind of get the low-hanging fruit and get the data that way, but the best way is to go into transactions, and you're able to get to database and external calls within transactions. Actually, real quick before I flip over, in the overview page, these are your 5 slowest, and these little numbers here will take you directly to a single transaction trace, and it has the time there. But we'll drill into that right now. For every tab that you pull into just about, you can look at them in different ways. So most time consuming, so during this 12-hour period, 43% of the time was spent on the catalog product view. You can look at it in slowest average, whichever way you like. Let's just look at the top one that's happening the most often or being the most used. Now we're looking at it in aggregate. So during this 12-hour period, 23 requests per minute, so whatever that equates to, all of them in aggregate, this is where the time spent. 96% of the time on code, as we saw on the overview page. So it looks like the code is what we're going to be looking into, PHP. So yeah, PHP code. We'll jump into that. I see that you already did run a key transaction. So this is where you do it. Looks like you already have one. So you're able to adjust this AppDex score as well. So by looking at the overview page, you can see this is even a little bit longer. So that you were probably going to want to bump that up as well to around 2 seconds for the time being, just so you're not getting just a ton of alerts. Take me back. All right, so we're back to the transactions. in this catalog product. Anything that's hyperlinked, you're able to click on it. It'll take you over. So these are database. Click over, and you'll go over to the database tab to get more queries and see what other transactions those database calls are on, but those look pretty quick. So for this single transaction, we have some single transaction traces. So these are the frustrating, quote unquote, transaction traces that are 4x your Apdex score. You can click into it here. See what server took place on, the response time, CPU burn, and then URL that this one was on, and then attributes as well. So with PHP, you're able to add attributes to kind of get more information into the code, so parameters, user ID, and then also with the API here, you can see other attributes that can be added, and I'll send this over at the end of the call. You can go here to the trace details, see exactly what took place. Anything, you can open this up to see the database call, database query here, or you can see all the database queries, but again, those are pretty quick. So it would be something to look at in the code here. And then for sharing, because when you go to different windows, you'll be looking at whatever time ticker you have it at. So if you want to share a static view, just copy and paste a permalink to another member of the team. And if you just change anything like that, just redo the permalink, and it'll have that static view for sharing. We also have ticketing systems like Jira, Pivotal, or Lighthouse that you're able to integrate with and file tickets that way. All right, so that's transaction traces. Database external, very similar to what you're looking at with transaction traces. You can click on this top one, see what transactions this is on, and then also you can jump into the slow queries, very similar with external calls, so I won't spend too much time. Two more things I wanted to touch on with APM, error analytics. So you can jump right into either one of these errors, or you can, there's only two, so, but you are able to filter them by error message, anything like that. Look at this one. You get error frequency, and then you dive into the stack trace and other information about the errors. Last thing is deployments. This is our deployments page for any change in functionality, changes in the code, deployments made. You can set this up. I'll send over a video on how to. It does a curl request using the REST API, and you'll have an overview page for all changes to make sure it's doing what you want it to be doing. It doesn't have any spikes in it. I'll send over the video on how to deploy that. Very useful tool for real-time monitoring during deployments for developers. Check out some of the reports. You'll be getting SLAs on Mondays. Yeah, we touched on key transactions. Alerts here. This is where you can sort of fine-tune those. I would change some of the Apdex scores first, but you can also kind of bump up the thresholds, whether it be with error rate or Apdex score, by editing here. So if you wanted to change this to, I don't want to be alerted quite as often, so you would go down to either 0.5, that would be less. You'd be alerted less. This is up here is where you'd be alerted more on it. You can also, here's the key transactions, here's server policies. Those are pretty standard for the amount of CPU disk I have. They seem to be off right now. Excuse me. And then also you're able to be alerted in different ways. I would definitely recommend downloading the New Relic native app so you can be alerted that way, and kind of you'll be able to have some of our analytics right on your phone. But if you have Slack, you can do a webhook, HipChat, email, and a couple others. All right, that's all. Just quick with APM, things to touch on. Browser, I have a bunch of kind of pages already locked and loaded. So this is time spent in the front end, so you can see time spent in DOM processing, page rendering. Web application, that's purple, that's everything that's going on in the back end. And everything is flipped over. So it looks like the 7 seconds is a good Apdex score for your browser. Maybe bump it up a bit. Everything is very similar that we're running through all here, requests. We'll jump into Ajax and JavaScript errors directly, but a great place to start is with page views here. So it looks like you guys can do some whitelisting to get a little bit more information and segment out your URLs. But let's just take a look at the top one here. You're able to look at them in different ways. So you can see the Ajax calls that are taking place on this URL. and then you can see the back-end transactions on this URL as well. So it looks like this is a back-end issue. So this hyperlink here, by clicking, will take you back into APM, and then you can go see single transaction traces of this transaction to diagnose where the issue potentially could be. And also, here we go, is what I wanted to talk about was session traces. So you can go directly to session traces. I just toggle over here. And you can look at individual sessions on specific URLs that a real user had. So they use this browser. This is when it actually took place and the amount of time. So you can start here and look at some of the longer running ones. Or you could, from page views, pick your URL and see the session traces. So let's go from here. Chrome, 16 seconds, this URL. Let's take a look at it. All right, so again, the exact time spent in the back end, DOM, page rendering, no waiting for AJAX or first interaction. So I'm going to actually go back and try to find one with a first interaction. And I'll explain what that is in a second. Let's just try this 5-second one. All right, great. So no waiting for AJAX, but there was a first interaction. That's when the user mouse scrolled, believed that the page was loaded. So everything purple here. In the back end, you can get some information about it. We stepped into DOM processing. PayPal quick, that's good. Assets. Nothing looks too bad right now. We have our first JavaScript error. You can click on it to go into the JavaScript error tab. Same with AJAX. You can see the full detail there, bottom right on the little window. And it'll take you over to those tabs, which we'll touch on in just a second. JavaScript errors. Let's see if we can find the first interaction. It looks like it wasn't before the page. Here we go. So this is when they started mousing, believe the page was loaded. So sometimes you get JavaScript errors or AJAX calls after that. But it can be sort of helpful to see how people are interacting with the page. Some other assets or interactions. All right, so then you can click directly to AJAX and JavaScript errors. Session trace is open. So you can go directly to AJAX calls. Let's just look at this top one as an example. You can look at them in different ways. So you can see, it might be just on that transaction. Oh, by page view. So just these two page views, or do that one. Oh, it's just one page view that this AJAX call is on. It's actually multiple. So all of these are more session traces that you can go into that were, you don't have the time on them, but you can go into them to see what was going on with this AJAX call. It might be better to look at it in response time, 13 seconds. So this might be an issue to see how many. All right, while that is loading, I'll toggle over to JavaScript errors. So you can dive into any of these. Let's do this one here. Okay, great. So this one does have some session traces where the JavaScript error took place in. Looks like Internet Explorer might be an issue with this guy. And then you can get stack trace, kind of toggle over to see other URLs that the JavaScript error is taking place on. And then you can go directly to browsers to see the performance of the different browsers being used. Actually, I already have filterable geography open. You can see where your users are coming from, and red is obviously worse than green. You can filter them by just the URL. You can add the attributes that I showed earlier with PHP to be able to filter by user ID, user email. Get some information about where people are coming from. Here's where you can do some whitelisting to add with the page views where your URLs are. So this is a perfect transition, kind of where customers are coming from to Synthetics. Synthetics is kind of the proactive monitoring tool that we have. Ping monitors, it's a simple GET request. So you can drop in a URL, name it, different locations, how often, if there's no response, you'll be alerted right away. But simple scripted and API tests actually give you full page load. So you set up simple the exact same way, and it'll give you a full page load and deep metrics into what was taking place on the front end. It'll build an APM transaction in the back end to kind of test it synthetically end to end. Scripted browser you can set up by simulating a user doing multiple steps on the site. Then we also have API tests as well. All right, so server, I saw that you did already deploy. With an APM subscription, servers are unlimited, so deploy all your servers, deploy your MySQL server, load balancer, anything you have. I would definitely recommend deploying those servers to get metrics on it, the CPU, disk IO, all these good metrics that you can be alerted on. And then lastly, we have Insights. So Insights is our analytics tool. So you can add more attributes to filter by, but we're collecting all these events from the front end, from the back end. So page view, we're looking at front end, transaction error, looking into the back end. That you can query by with a New Relic SQLing language. So if you just want to look at this URL, it'll kind of write the query language for you. You can see what attributes you're able to actually query by. Where's my little scroller? There it is. Oops. You can kind of scroll across, see others. There are more. It's not, my window's kind of screwy. So that's one way to kind of set it up through query and watch the video. There's some auto populations that you can do. And then I also dropped in some dashboards as well. So if you go to all dashboards, these are the ones I dropped in. I can drop in more. But let's just go to tell me about my users. So you can get some metrics. What cities are my users coming from, most popular pages, browsers being used, what time, live sessions, who's on my app. We can help configure a flow chart to see where people are going on the site, potentially dropping off. We can add attributes to individual users. I'll show you an example of that. Before I actually do that, I'll show you how to edit these. So take a look at all of them. Here's another example. Let's take slowest page views. So let's show you how to edit these. You go edit. You go here to edit, and now we're looking at the language that this query was. You can look at them in different ways, and then you can say, I actually want to see the top 100 from 8 days ago. Rerun it. There we go. I don't know why 8 days doesn't work, but 7 does. And then you just want to save changes, and it will be updated, done editing, and then you can kind of pop it open to see all of them here. So those are for slowest URLs. And then there's another trick that you can do by clicking Edit. Click anyone that has these little, I don't even know what those are called, but by clicking those, you want to link it. So just go current dashboard, link, done editing, and now these are hyperlinked. So if you just want to say, I just want to see this the 54 browser version, all your windows will change to whatever you clicked on. So we're filtered just by this agent version. You can do it for any of the boxes. So if I just want to see this guy here, you're able to do so for all your windows. Those are 2 little tricks. I would definitely recommend kind of extending these. We only have 1 day of data, so that's why that's not populating yet. Let's see what else we have. Some web transaction stuff. This is the database one. We have tons that can be made. Those are just the sort of starting points. All right. Ajax didn't load for some reason, but those are the main things to touch on. I'll send over some info of what I just spoke about, and then please follow up with any questions and I can field them. Thanks.